The snow was red before anyone fired a shot. Ethan Cole stood at the edge of the kill zone, staring at a woman who shouldn't have been there. No rank visible, no unit patch, no deference in her eyes. He'd asked her the question like a joke. "So what's your rank?" She didn't answer. And when the mountain exploded into fire and screaming metal, when his commander bled out in the snow and the chain of command shattered like frozen glass, he asked again. This time, she looked at him with the kind of calm that only comes from someone who's already decided who lives and who dies. "High enough," she said, and stood up under enemy fire. What happened next rewrote everything he thought he knew about authority, survival, and the woman they called Viper. If you want to see how a ghost turned the hunters into the hunted, stay with me until the very end. Drop a like, leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The briefing room smelled like burnt coffee and old fear. Ethan Cole sat with his back straight, eyes forward, pretending the knot in his stomach didn't exist. Around him, 8 operators checked weapons, reviewed maps, murmured coordinates into throat mics. The kind of men who'd seen enough blood to stop bragging about it. Outside the reinforced windows, snow fell in thick curtains, swallowing the mountains whole. Their target was simple on paper. Extract a high-value informant from a safe house buried deep in hostile territory, in and out before dawn, clean, surgical. The kind of operation they'd run 100 times. But this time felt different. "Listen up." The mission commander, a square-jawed veteran named Briggs, slapped a laminated map onto the table. "We've got a 12-hour window. Informant sitting in this valley, coordinates locked. Intel says the area is cold, but we're not taking chances. 2 Humvees, fast insertion, minimal noise. Extract the asset and vanish before anyone knows we were there." Heads nodded. Someone cracked knuckles. Briggs continued. "One more thing. We're bringing a specialist." That's when she walked in. No fanfare, no introduction. Just the sound of boots on concrete and the sudden weight of attention shifting. She was maybe 5'8", lean, dark hair pulled tight, face that gave away nothing. No rank insignia, no unit patch. Just a name tape that read Viper in faded black letters. She didn't acknowledge the room, didn't smile or nod or do any of the small social dances soldiers use to establish hierarchy. She just moved to the far wall, set down a rifle case, and began inspecting her gear with the focus of someone completely alone. Ethan leaned toward the man next to him, a wiry demolitions expert named Ramos. "Who's that?" Ramos shrugged. "Consultant, I heard. Some kind of specialist they're attaching last minute." "Consultant?" Ethan kept his voice low, but the skepticism leaked through. "We're running an extraction in Indian country, and they send us a consultant? Don't ask me, man. Brass says she's here, so she's here." Briggs cleared his throat, cutting off the murmurs. "Viper's tasked with overwatch and threat assessment. She knows the terrain. You follow her guidance if she gives it. Questions?" Silence. Ethan caught himself staring. Something about her unsettled him. Not in a threatening way, but in the way you'd feel watching a predator that hadn't decided yet whether you were food. She moved too smoothly, too certain, like she'd already walked this mission in her head and found it boring. He decided to break the ice. As the briefing dissolved and operators filtered toward the armory, Ethan drifted over to where Viper stood, checking the scope on a suppressed rifle that looked custom-built. Up close, he could see faint scars tracing her knuckles, the kind you earned from years of close-quarters work. "So," he said, trying for casual, "what's your rank?" She didn't look up. Her fingers moved over the rifle's action, smooth and mechanical. Ethan waited. When she still didn't respond, he forced a grin. "Come on, we're about to walk into a hornet's nest together. Little conversation won't kill us." Finally, she glanced at him. Her eyes were dark, unreadable, and cold enough to make him regret opening his mouth. "You need to know my rank to do your job?" she asked. Her voice was low, controlled, almost bored. "No, Then focus on yours." She went back to her rifle. Ethan stood there for a beat, heat rising in his chest. He wasn't used to being dismissed. Not like that. Not by someone who looked like she'd been pulled off a training rotation and dropped into a real mission as an afterthought. Ramos appeared at his elbow, grinning. "Smooth, Cole, real smooth. Shut up." "She's got you rattled. She doesn't have me anything." Ethan turned away, jaw tight. Let's just get this over with. The convoy rolled out at 2300 hours. 2 Humvees, lights off, crawling through mountain roads that hadn't seen maintenance in a decade. Snow came down in waves, cutting visibility to almost nothing. The wipers fought a losing battle. Inside the lead vehicle, Ethan sat pressed between Ramos and a quiet medic named Chen, watching the white world slide past. Viper sat alone in the back corner, eyes half closed, breathing slow and steady, like she was meditating or sleeping. Hard to tell. Think she's even awake? Ramos muttered. Ethan didn't answer. He was too busy running scenarios in his head. The valley they were heading into was a natural choke point, steep ridges on 3 sides, a single access road, limited escape routes. Good for defense, bad for extraction. If anything went sideways, they'd be boxed in. But the intel was solid. Had to be. They wouldn't send a team this deep without confirmation. Right? The radio crackled. Briggs's voice, calm and measured. 10 minutes to drop zone, weapons check. Stay tight. Around him, operators shifted, checking magazines, tightening straps, tapping helmet mounts. The ritual of preparation, the small motions that kept fear manageable. Ethan glanced back at Viper. She hadn't moved. Eyes still half closed, breathing still slow. But now he noticed something. Her right hand rested on her rifle, fingers curled just enough to be ready. Not tense, not gripping, just there, waiting, like she already knew something the rest of them didn't. The safe house sat in a shallow valley, ringed by black pines and snowdrifts that climbed halfway up its stone walls. A single window glowed yellow in the dark. Smoke curled from the chimney, thin and weak. It looked peaceful, too peaceful. The convoy stopped half a click out, engines cutting to silence. Operators spilled into the snow, boots crunching, breath fogging. Briggs organized them into a wedge formation, 4 on point, 2 flanking, Chen hanging back with medical, Viper. Ethan scanned the tree line. Where the hell was she? Then he saw movement. Viper had already ghosted 30 meters ahead, crouched low behind a fallen log, scanning the ridges with a compact spotting scope. No one had told her to advance. She just did it. Briggs noticed too. His jaw tightened, but he didn't call her back. Instead, he waved the team forward. They moved in silence, weapons up, eyes sweeping. The snow muffled everything, footsteps, breathing, even thought. Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. He hated this part. The slow approach. The waiting for something to go wrong. Viper's voice came through the team channel, low and clipped. Thermal's cold. No movement on the roof. Single heat signature inside, ground floor, northeast corner. Briggs keyed his mic. Copy. Maintain overwatch. Ethan frowned. How the hell did she have thermals? He glanced back, but she was already repositioning, moving through the snow like a shadow with purpose. The team closed on the safe house. 50 meters. 40. 30. That's when Ethan noticed the music. Faint. Tinny. Drifting down from somewhere in the valley. Jingle bells. Warped and distant. Like it was coming from a radio left on in an abandoned car. It didn't fit. Nothing about it fit. Ramos heard it too. The hell is that? Focus, Briggs snapped. But even he sounded uneasy. 20 meters. The music stopped. Just stopped. The silence hit like a physical blow. Ethan's stomach dropped. Every instinct he had started screaming at once. He opened his mouth to say something, he didn't even know what. But the words never came. Because that's when the mountain exploded. The first rocket came from the ridgeline, a streak of fire that slammed into the lead Humvee and turned it into a fireball. The shockwave threw Ethan sideways into the snow, ears ringing, vision whiting out. He tasted copper, smelled burning fuel. Then the gunfire started. Muzzle flashes erupted from 3 directions: ridge, tree line, high ground behind the safe house. Overlapping fields of fire, interlocking kill zones. They'd walked straight into an ambush so perfect it felt rehearsed. Someone screamed. Chen, maybe. Or Ramos. Hard to tell over the roar of automatic weapons chewing through the night. Ethan rolled behind a snowdrift, yanking his rifle up, trying to find a target. Shapes moved in the dark. Shadows with guns. Too many. Too close. Briggs's voice cut through the chaos. Fall back to secondary position. but there was no secondary position. They were in the open, pinned down, taking fire from elevated positions they couldn't see. The textbook definition of a kill zone. Another explosion, mortar this time, shredded a pine tree and sent splinters ripping through the air. Ethan heard someone grunt, heard the wet slap of a body hitting snow. His radio crackled with panicked voices. "Taking fire from the ridge. Need suppression on that machine gun. Chen's hit. Chen's hit." Ethan's hands shook. He fired 3-round bursts at muzzle flashes, but it felt useless, like throwing rocks at a tank. They were outnumbered, outgunned, caught in the worst possible position. And the informant? Gone. Or never there. Didn't matter now. He risked a glance toward the safe house. The door hung open, swinging in the wind. Inside, through the window, he could see shapes on the floor, bodies, staged. This whole thing had been a setup from the beginning. "Fuck!" Ramos slid into cover beside him, face pale, eyes too wide. "They knew we were coming. They fucking knew." "Yeah, I got that." Ethan's mind raced. Where was Briggs? Where was the rest of the team? He tried to count heads, but the snow and smoke made it impossible. That's when he saw Viper. She was still in the tree line, crouched behind that same fallen log, completely motionless. Not firing, not moving, just watching. Like she was studying the battlefield, reading it, absorbing every detail. What the hell was she doing? Another mortar round screamed in, and Ethan threw himself flat. The world turned into noise and pressure. When he looked up again, Briggs was down. The commander lay twisted in the snow, one hand pressed to his side, blood dark against his jacket. He tried to key his radio, but his fingers wouldn't work. His eyes found Ethan's across the chaos, and Ethan understood. Command just broke. Panic spreads faster than fire. Ethan saw it ripple through the team, operators looking around, waiting for orders that weren't coming, realizing they were leaderless in the middle of a slaughter. Ramos started swearing in Spanish. Someone else just kept firing on full auto, wasting ammo, screaming into the void. They had maybe 2 minutes before it all collapsed into a rout. Ethan grabbed his radio. "All units, consolidate on..." But he didn't know where. Consolidate where? Every direction was hostile. Every option was a different flavor of death. Then Viper's voice cut through the channel, cold and surgical. "Stop!" Everyone froze. Not because of the word, but because of the way she said it, like a scalpel through noise. "Stop firing! Go quiet! Now!" Ethan stared at his radio like it had just started speaking a foreign language. Who the hell did she think she was, giving orders? But the crazy thing? The team obeyed. One by one, the rifles went silent. The only sounds left were the wind, the crackle of burning metal, and the distant thump of enemy mortars adjusting their aim. Viper's voice again. "They're tracking your muzzle flashes. Every time you fire, you give them a target, so stop giving them targets." It made sense. Horrible, obvious sense. But it also meant sitting in the dark while the enemy closed in. Ethan's finger hovered over the transmit button. He wanted to argue, wanted to ask what the hell her plan was. But something stopped him. Maybe the memory of her eyes in the briefing room, or the way she'd moved through the snow like she'd already seen this fight play out. Ramos grabbed his arm. "Cole, what do we do?" "Good question." Ethan looked toward the tree line. Viper was moving now, slipping through the shadows, circling wide. He could barely track her. She moved like smoke. Then she stopped, raised her rifle, one smooth motion. Crack. A single suppressed shot. Somewhere on the ridge, a heavy machine gun went silent. Crack. Another shot. Another position eliminated. Ethan's breath caught. She wasn't just shooting, she was dismantling them, picking apart the ambush piece by piece so quietly the enemy didn't even realize they were being hunted. Her voice came back through the radio, steady as a metronome. "I'm taking command now. Anyone object?" Silence. Ethan glanced at Ramos. Ramos stared back, eyes wide. No one objected. "Good," Viper continued. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to move east, single file, no lights, no talking. Follow the tree line to the dry creek bed. There's a cave system 300 meters out. You're going to hole up there and wait for extraction." "What about you?" Ethan heard himself ask. There was a pause. Long enough that he thought maybe she hadn't heard him. Then, "I'm going hunting." And just like that, she was gone. Moving through a kill zone in silence is like holding your breath underwater. You know you can't do it forever, but you do it anyway because the alternative is drowning. Ethan led the survivors east, stepping where Viper had stepped, following a path she'd somehow mapped in her head. Behind him, Ramos, limping, Chen dragging a wounded operator. Two others he didn't even know the names of, faces pale, hands shaking. They moved like ghosts, like refugees, like men who'd just learned the difference between confidence and survival. Above them, the battle continued. But it sounded different now, confused. The enemy fire was erratic, unfocused, chasing shadows, and every few seconds, another rifle crack echoed from somewhere impossible, and another hostile position went dark. Viper was up there, alone, turning the ambush inside out. Ethan didn't understand how, didn't understand any of this, but he trusted it because he had no other choice. The creek bed appeared exactly where she said it would, a deep cut in the earth, sheltered by overhanging rocks and frozen roots, and beyond it, barely visible in the snow, the mouth of a cave. "Inside," Ethan whispered. "Everyone inside." They piled in, collapsing against the stone walls, breath steaming, blood freezing on sleeves. Chen worked on the wounded with shaking hands. Ramos sat with his head between his knees, muttering prayers in 2 languages. Ethan stood at the cave mouth, staring out at the valley. The gunfire was dying now, fading, being replaced by something worse, confused shouts in a language he didn't speak, the sound of men realizing they were no longer the hunters. How long had it been? 10 minutes? 20? Time felt broken. Then, silence. Complete suffocating silence. Ethan's radio crackled. "Extraction inbound, 2 minutes. Be ready." He keyed his mic with numb fingers. "Copy. Where are you?" No answer. The rotor noise came first. Low, deep, the kind of sound you feel in your chest before you hear it. Then the aircraft appeared through the snow. A black helicopter with no markings, no lights, descending like something out of a fever dream. And walking toward it, rifle slung, moving with the same unhurried certainty she'd had in the briefing room. Viper. No blood on her, no scratches, not even breathing hard. She reached the cave entrance and looked at Ethan. For the first time since they'd met, something almost like expression crossed her face. "Load the wounded first," she said. "We're leaving." Ethan just stared. "What the hell are you?" She didn't answer. She never answered. But as the team stumbled toward the helicopter, as Chen and the others were lifted aboard and the rotors screamed louder, Ethan finally understood something fundamental. She hadn't saved them. She'd allowed them to survive. There was a difference, and that difference had a name. The helicopter climbed fast, punching through the storm, leaving the valley and its ghosts behind. Ethan sat in the troop bay, staring at his hands. They were still shaking. Across from him, Viper sat with her eyes closed, rifle across her lap, the same way she'd sat in the Humvee hours ago, like nothing had happened, like she did this every night. Ramos leaned close. "You still want to know her rank?" Ethan shook his head. He didn't need to know anymore, because rank was just a word, a symbol on a chest, a line on a chart. What Viper had, that was something else entirely. That was authority. And as the mountains disappeared into the dark behind them, Ethan realized he'd just survived the most important lesson of his life. The person who stands up when everyone else is on their knees. That's who's in charge. Everything else is just paperwork. The facility had no windows. Ethan noticed that first. The way the fluorescent lights hummed too loud in the silence. The way the air tasted recycled and cold. They'd landed on a tarmac he didn't recognize, been herded into black vans with tinted windows, and driven for what felt like hours through roads that never seemed to turn. Now he sat in a white room with a metal table and 2 chairs, watching a camera blink red in the corner. No one had told him where he was. No one had told him anything. The door opened without warning. A man in his 50s entered, suit too expensive for military, face too smooth for field work. He carried a tablet and the kind of authority that came from never having to raise his voice. "Officer Cole." The man sat down, didn't offer a hand. "I'm Deputy Director Kessler. I oversee operations integrity for classified missions. You understand what that means?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "It means you're here to make sure we don't talk. It means I'm here to understand what happened in that valley." Kessler tapped the tablet. Your team walked into a coordinated ambush. Your commander is in surgery. 3 men are critical, and somehow you all made it out alive. He looked up. I need to know how. Viper. The name hung in the air like a curse. Kessler's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Tell me about her. Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms. You sent her. You tell me. I'm asking you. Why? You already know what she did. I know what the field report says. Kessler set the tablet down. I want to hear it from someone who was there, who saw her work. Ethan studied the man across from him. This wasn't a debriefing. This was an interrogation. They were looking for something. Discrepancies, holes, reasons to bury the whole operation under classifications so thick no light would ever touch it. She saved our lives, Ethan said finally. That's the report. How? You want the tactical breakdown or the part where she moved through a hostile kill zone like it was a training exercise? Kessler didn't blink. Both. So Ethan told him about the silence, the shots, the way she dismantled the ambush piece by piece while his team ran for their lives. He told him about the calm in her voice, the precision in her movements, the way she'd taken command without asking permission. What he didn't tell him was how it felt. Watching someone operate on a level so far beyond his own training that it made him question everything he thought he knew about warfare. When he finished, Kessler was quiet for a long time. You asked her about her rank, he said eventually. Twice. Ethan blinked. You listened to the comms? Every word. Kessler folded his hands. What did she tell you? High enough. And you believed her. I didn't have a choice. Ethan's voice hardened. We were dying. She was the only one who knew how to stop it. Kessler stood, picked up his tablet. Officer Cole, what I'm about to tell you is classified above your clearance. The mission you ran never happened. The valley doesn't exist on any map. And the woman you knew as Viper? He paused at the door. She was never there. That's it? Ethan surged to his feet. You're just going to erase her? Pretend she didn't pull us out of hell? I'm going to make sure you understand the cost of talking about things you don't understand. Kessler's voice dropped to something colder. Go home, Officer Cole. Heal. Forget. And if you're smart, you'll never ask about her again. The door closed with a soft click. Ethan stood alone in the white room, fists clenched, heart hammering. The camera blinked red. Someone was still watching. He sat down slowly, forced his breathing to steady. They could erase the mission, redact the reports, burn every piece of evidence that Viper had ever existed. But they couldn't erase what he'd learned. And that, he realized, was the real threat. 3 days later, they released him. No ceremony, no explanation. Just a folder with discharge papers, an airline ticket, and a warning delivered by a stone-faced officer he'd never met. This conversation ends here. Ethan went home to an apartment that felt too quiet, too small, too far from the mountains. He tried to sleep, tried to eat, tried to convince himself that everything was fine, that he'd survived and that was enough. It wasn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the valley, saw the muzzle flashes, saw Briggs bleeding in the snow. And beyond it all, moving through the chaos like a ghost with a rifle, he saw her. Viper. Who the hell was she? He started digging, carefully, quietly, using contacts who owed him favors, database access he wasn't supposed to have, and the kind of late-night obsession that came from questions with no answers. He found nothing. No service records, no personnel files, no training certifications or deployment histories. The name Viper existed in exactly one place, a redacted operations log that had been scrubbed so thoroughly it might as well have been fiction. It was like she'd been erased, or like she'd never existed in the first place. Ethan sat in his apartment at 3 a.m, staring at a blank screen, feeling the weight of something larger than himself pressing down. They'd warned him to let it go. Smart money said he should listen, but he couldn't, because somewhere out there a woman with no rank and no past had rewritten the rules of command in front of his eyes. And if he didn't understand how, he'd spend the rest of his career second-guessing every decision he made. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. Stop looking. Ethan stared at the screen. His pulse kicked up. He typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Someone who's keeping you alive. Stop. Looking. The phone went dead. Not off, dead. Screen black. Wouldn't restart. Ethan set it down slowly, hands shaking. They were watching. Of course they were watching. He'd been naive to think otherwise. Fine. He'd stop looking. But he wouldn't stop learning. Polka. 6 weeks later, Ethan shipped out again. Different unit, different mission. Same mountains, same snow, same suffocating weight of expectation. The brass had cleared him for active duty with a psychological evaluation so cursory it was almost insulting. They wanted him back in the field, wanted to see if he'd break. He didn't plan to give them the satisfaction. The new team was smaller, 5 operators including himself, tasked with reconnaissance on a supply route the enemy had been using to move weapons. Low risk. Textbook op. The kind of mission designed to ease someone back into combat. Ethan hated it immediately. Not because of the danger, but because of the commander, a by-the-book captain named Ridley, who treated tactics like scripture and improvisation like sin. Every movement was planned down to the second. Every contingency had a contingency. It was rigid, predictable, and it made Ethan's teeth ache. "You have a problem, Cole?" Ridley asked during the final briefing. The rest of the team looked up, sensing blood in the water. Ethan kept his face neutral. "No, sir. You've been staring at the map for 10 minutes like it personally offended you." "Just reviewing the route." "The route is fine. I've run it a dozen times." Ridley's voice had that edge officers get when their authority is questioned. "Unless you think you know better?" The room went quiet. This was a test. Ethan could feel it, the weight of eyes, the unspoken challenge. 6 weeks ago, he would have backed down, would have swallowed his doubts and followed orders. But 6 weeks ago, he hadn't watched a woman with no rank take command of a battlefield. "I think the route exposes us on the high ground," Ethan said carefully. "If we move along the valley floor, we're visible from 3 ridge lines, 1 spotter with a radio, and we're compromised." Ridley's jaw tightened. "And your alternative?" "Parallel the ridge instead. Slower, but we control the high ground. Better sight lines, easier to abort if we need to. That adds 2 hours to the timeline. It also keeps us alive." The words came out harder than he intended. Ridley stared at him, face reddening, and Ethan realized he'd crossed a line. You didn't challenge a commanding officer in front of the team, not unless you wanted to spend the rest of the deployment cleaning latrines. But Ridley didn't explode. Instead, he smiled. The kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. 2 hours, he repeated. "You think the enemy's going to wait around for us to take the scenic route?" "I think they'll be waiting if we take the obvious one." Ridley leaned back, crossing his arms. "You know what your problem is, Cole? You think surviving one bad op makes you an expert. It doesn't. It makes you lucky." He turned to the rest of the team. "We're taking the valley route, as planned. Any other objections?" Silence. Ethan sat down, jaw clenched, feeling the weight of failure settle into his chest. He'd tried. He'd spoken up, and it hadn't mattered, because Ridley had rank. And rank, apparently, trumped common sense. They hit the valley at dawn, moving in a loose column, weapons ready, eyes scanning. The snow had melted enough to turn the ground into freezing mud that sucked at their boots. Visibility was good. Too good. Ethan could see for kilometers in every direction, which meant anyone looking could see them too. He kept checking the ridgelines, kept waiting for the glint of a scope, the whisper of movement. His instincts screamed that something was wrong, but he had no evidence. Just a feeling, just the memory of a woman who'd known the valley was a trap before anyone else did. "Cole, you're drifting." The voice belonged to Martinez, the team's second in command, a wiry man with sharp eyes and a reputation for cutting through bullshit. "Stay tight." "Yeah." Ethan adjusted his position, but he couldn't shake the unease. It crawled up his spine like something alive. Martinez fell into step beside him. "Ridley's got a hard-on for protocol. Don't take it personal." "I'm not." "Bullshit. You've been wound tight since the briefing." Ethan glanced at him. Martinez was older, mid-30s, with the kind of calm that came from seeing enough action to stop pretending it was glorious. "You think I'm wrong?" "About the route?" Martinez shrugged. "Probably not. But wrong doesn't matter if the CO won't listen." "So what? We just follow bad orders?" We follow orders, bad, good, or ugly. That's the job. Martinez's voice softened. Look, I heard about what happened on your last op. Heard you had a rough go. Ethan's stomach tightened. Who told you that? Nobody tells you anything in this business. You just pick up pieces. Martinez kept his eyes forward. Word is your team got chewed up in an ambush. Word is someone pulled you out. Someone off book. There's no word. The mission's classified. Everything's classified until it's not. Martinez gave him a long look. Whatever you saw out there, whatever you think you learned, file it away. Because captains like Ridley don't want students. They want soldiers. And if being a soldier gets us killed? Martinez didn't answer. He didn't have to. But the ambush came at noon. Not an explosion, not a dramatic firefight, just the quiet, efficient horror of a well-placed sniper round that took out their radio man before anyone realized they were being watched. The body hit the mud with a wet sound. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Ridley was screaming orders, and the team scattered into cover that didn't exist. Ethan threw himself behind a boulder, heart slamming, scanning for the shooter. The ridgeline. Had to be the ridgeline. Exactly where he'd said they'd be exposed. Another shot. Dirt exploded near Martinez's head. He rolled left, swearing, trying to find an angle. Ridley's voice cut through the chaos. Suppressive fire! Light up that ridge! The team opened up, pouring rounds into the high ground, but it was pointless. They were shooting at ghosts. The sniper had elevation, concealment, and patience. Every shot they fired gave away their position. Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't random. This was planned. They'd been tracked, studied, and now they were being picked apart, just like the valley. Cole! Ridley's voice, shrill with panic. Flank left! Get us an angle! Ethan stared at him. Flank left? Into open ground with a sniper watching? That wasn't tactics. That was suicide. Did you hear me? Move! Ethan's finger hovered over the trigger. He could follow the order, charge into the open. Maybe get lucky. Probably get killed. Or he could do what Viper would do. No, he said. Ridley's face went white. What did you just say? I said no. Ethan's voice was steady now, the fear burning away into something colder. That's a kill zone. Anyone who moves dies. I gave you an order, and I'm telling you it's wrong. The team stared. Martinez's eyes went wide. This was mutiny. This was career ending. This was the kind of moment that followed you forever. But Ethan didn't care, because somewhere in the back of his mind he could hear Viper's voice. Stop firing. Go quiet. Everyone cease fire, he said. Now. To his shock, they obeyed. One by one, the rifles went silent. The sudden quiet was deafening. Ridley looked like he was about to have a stroke. Cole, I swear to... Shut up. Ethan's eyes were on the ridge, watching, waiting. He's tracking our muzzle flashes. Every time we shoot, he knows where we are, so we stop giving him targets. Martinez caught on first. Jesus, he's right. I don't care if he's another shot. This one passed so close to Ridley's head that he felt the wind. He dropped flat, gasping, all the authority draining out of him in an instant. Ethan moved, not toward the ridge, toward the dead radio man. He low-crawled through the mud, ignoring the sick weight in his stomach, and grabbed the radio. Blood slicked the controls. He wiped it on his sleeve and keyed the mic. Overwatch, this is ground team. We are taking effective fire from elevated position, requesting immediate air support. Static? Then a voice, clipped and professional. Ground team, air support is 20 minutes out. Can you hold? 20 minutes. An eternity. We'll hold, Ethan lied. He killed the radio and looked back at the team. They were watching him now, not Ridley, him. Here's what we're going to do, Ethan said, voice low and controlled. We're going to move. Single file. No shooting unless I give the word. We stay low, use the terrain, and we do not stop until we're out of his sight line. That's, Ridley started. That's how we survive, Ethan cut him off. You want to stay here and get picked off one by one. Be my guest. But I'm moving. Anyone who wants to live, follow me. He didn't wait for an answer. He just started moving, crawling through the mud toward a depression in the terrain that might provide cover. Behind him, he heard Martinez swear softly, then the sound of someone else moving, then another. Ridley was the last to follow, and Ethan could feel the hatred radiating off him like heat. Good. Let him hate, as long as they made it out alive. They reached the depression 20 agonizing meters later, hearts hammering, lungs burning. The sniper fired twice more, but both shots went wide. He was guessing now, losing his angles. Ethan risked a glance back. The valley was empty, silent. The sniper had either pulled back or was waiting for them to make a mistake. Martinez crawled up beside him, face streaked with mud. That was the ballsiest thing I've ever seen. Or the dumbest. Little of both. Martinez grinned, then his expression sobered. Ridley's going to bury you for this. Probably. Worth it? Ethan thought about Briggs bleeding in the snow. Thought about Viper standing under fire. Thought about the difference between rank and authority. Yeah, he said. It's worth it. The helicopter arrived 18 minutes later, close enough to the estimate that Ethan almost laughed. They scrambled aboard, muddy and shaking, and lifted off into clean sky. Ridley sat as far from Ethan as possible, jaw clenched, eyes burning. He didn't say a word, didn't have to. Ethan had just committed career suicide, and he'd do it again in a heartbeat. The debriefing was worse than expected. Ridley filed a formal complaint: insubordination, refusal to follow orders, undermining command authority. The kind of charges that could end with a court-martial if the brass decided to push. Ethan sat through the interrogation stone-faced, answering questions in monotone, refusing to apologize. They wanted him to crack, to admit he'd been wrong, to beg for forgiveness. He gave them nothing. Because the truth was simple. He'd kept 4 men alive. And if that was insubordination, then the system was broken. The tribunal lasted 3 days. Witness testimony, tactical analysis, arguments from both sides. Ethan barely listened. He kept thinking about the valley, about the sniper, about the moment he'd chosen to ignore rank and trust his gut. On the 3rd day, they reached a verdict. The presiding officer, a gray-haired colonel with eyes like flint, read from a prepared statement. Officer Ethan Cole, you are hereby found guilty of willful disobordination of a direct order in a combat situation. However, given the circumstances and the outcome, this tribunal has determined that your actions, while inappropriate, were tactically sound. Ethan's pulse kicked. That was not what he expected. You will receive a formal reprimand in your service record, the colonel continued. You will also be removed from Captain Ridley's command and reassigned to a new unit pending evaluation. A reprimand, not a discharge, not a court-martial. He'd survived. The colonel leaned forward, voice dropping. Off the record, Cole, you made the right call. But the military doesn't reward right calls. It rewards the chain of command. You'd do well to remember that. Ethan stood, saluted, and walked out of the room feeling like he'd dodged a bullet he hadn't known was coming. Martinez was waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall. Heard you got slapped on the wrist. Something like that. Could have been worse. Could have been better. Martinez pushed off the wall, fell into step beside him. You know they're going to be watching you now, right? Every move, every decision. They'll be waiting for you to screw up again. Let them watch. That's the spirit. Martinez handed him a folded piece of paper. This came for you, no return address. Ethan unfolded it. Inside, written in clean block letters. You're learning. Don't stop. No signature, no explanation. But he knew who'd sent it. His hand shook as he refolded the paper and slipped it into his pocket. She was out there, watching, waiting to see if he'd become the kind of leader who stood up when everyone else fell down. He wouldn't disappoint her. 2 months later, Ethan received his new assignment, instructor at an advanced tactics training facility, teaching young officers how to think under pressure, how to read terrain, how to lead when the playbook failed. It wasn't the field, wasn't the adrenaline or the chaos or the clean moral certainty of putting rounds down range, but it was something better. It was a chance to pass on what he'd learned, to make sure the next generation understood that authority wasn't given. It was earned, one hard decision at a time. On his first day, standing in front of a classroom full of eager faces, Ethan told them a story. He told them about a winter night in a valley that didn't exist, where a woman with no rank saved an entire team by refusing to accept the way things were supposed to be. He didn't use her name, didn't give details, just enough to make them understand. And when he finished, when the room sat in silence processing what they'd heard, one of the students raised a hand. "Sir, who was she?" Ethan smiled. "Someone who taught me that leadership isn't about the rank on your chest. It's about standing up when everyone else is afraid to move." The student frowned. "But what was her actual rank?" "High enough," Ethan said, and that was all the answer they needed. The classroom stayed quiet long after the bell rang. Ethan watched his students file out, their faces marked with the kind of thoughtfulness that came from having your worldview cracked open. He told them the story about Viper, redacted, sanitized, but true enough to matter. And now they were walking out into the world carrying a question that would follow them for the rest of their careers. What do you do when the rank structure fails? It was a dangerous question, the kind that made generals nervous and politicians paranoid. But it was also the only question worth asking. Ethan gathered his notes, killed the lights, and headed for the parking lot. The sun hung low over the training facility, casting long shadows across the obstacle courses and firing ranges. In the distance, he could hear drill sergeants barking orders, the rhythmic crack of gunfire, the machinery of turning civilians into soldiers. He'd been doing this for 8 months now, teaching tactics, breaking down case studies, forcing young officers to think beyond the manual. It was good work, important work. But it wasn't enough. Because every night, when he closed his eyes, he still saw the valley, still saw Viper moving through the snow like death incarnate, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his real education had barely begun. His phone rang. Encrypted line. Number he didn't recognize. Ethan's pulse kicked. He answered without thinking. "Cole." Silence. Then a voice he hadn't heard in months, low, controlled, unmistakable. "You've been doing well." His breath caught. "Viper?" "The teaching suits you. You're making them question the right things." Ethan looked around the empty parking lot, suddenly aware of how exposed he was. "Where are you?" "Doesn't matter." A pause. "I'm calling because I need you to understand something. What you learned in that valley wasn't the end of your training. It was the beginning." "I don't—" "You will." The line went dead. Ethan stood frozen, phone still pressed to his ear, heart hammering. She'd been watching. Still watching. Evaluating him like he was a project she hadn't finished. The question was, finished for what? 3 weeks later, the orders came through. Immediate deployment, classified theater, joint task force operation requiring advanced tactical expertise. Report to Andrews Air Force Base in 48 hours. Bring nothing you can't carry. Ethan read the orders twice, looking for context that wasn't there. This wasn't standard rotation. This was a pull. Someone high up wanted him specifically, and they wanted him fast. He made calls, pulled strings, asked questions nobody would answer. Finally, Martinez, now stationed at the Pentagon, called him back. "You stepped in something," Martinez said without preamble. "What are you talking about?" "Your deployment orders. They didn't come through normal channels. Someone with serious juice put your name on a list, and now you're going somewhere most people don't come back from." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Where?" "Can't tell you. Won't tell you. But I can tell you this. The operation you're joining has a 90% casualty rate over the last 6 months. Whatever they're doing out there, it's a meat grinder. And they want me? They want someone who knows how to improvise when everything goes to hell." Martinez's voice dropped. "Someone who learned from the best." The implication hung in the air like smoke. "She requested me," Ethan said quietly. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Martinez sighed. "Look, I don't know what happened between you and whoever pulled you out of that valley, but if they're calling you back in, it means they think you're ready for something bigger. Question is, are you?" Ethan looked out his apartment window at the quiet street below. Normal people living normal lives. Safe. Predictable. Everything he'd supposedly been fighting to protect. But he wasn't built for normal anymore. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." Bam. Andrews was chaos wrapped in protocol. Ethan arrived with a duffel bag and a head full of questions. He was processed through 3 security checkpoints, each more paranoid than the last, before being herded onto a transport plane with 24 other operators, all hard-eyed, all silent, all carrying the same vibe of men who'd stopped asking where they were going. The flight took 18 hours. They landed on an airstrip that didn't exist on any map, in a country Ethan couldn't identify from the terrain, hot, dusty, mountains in the distance sharp enough to cut sky. No one spoke. They just loaded into trucks and drove. The base was temporary, prefab buildings, razor wire, guard towers manned by contractors with dead eyes. Ethan was assigned a bunk in a tent that smelled like diesel and old sweat. His bunkmate was a scarred sniper named Torres, who offered a handshake and nothing else. "Briefing's at 2100, Torres said. "Don't be late." "What's the op?" Torres smiled without humor. "You'll see." The briefing room was packed. 30 operators, all special forces, all looking like they'd been chewed up and spit out by something they didn't want to talk about. At the front of the room stood a colonel Ethan didn't recognize, flanked by maps covered in red markers. And in the back corner, half hidden in shadow, stood Viper. Ethan's heart stopped. She looked exactly the same, lean, focused, utterly still. She didn't acknowledge him, didn't even glance his way, but he knew she'd seen him, knew she was tracking every breath he took. The colonel cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, we're 24 hours from a critical operation. I won't sugarcoat it. This is the highest risk mission currently active in this theater. We're going after a high-value target who's been orchestrating attacks against coalition forces for the last 9 months. Intel says he's holed up in a compound 15 clicks from here, protected by a reinforced garrison and terrain that makes the Valley of Death look like a playground." Murmurs rippled through the room. Someone swore softly. The colonel continued. 3 previous attempts to extract this target have failed. The last team lost 12 men before they even reached the compound. We're not making the same mistakes, he gestured to Viper. That's why she's here. All eyes turned. Viper stepped forward, and the room went silent. The previous teams failed because they followed doctrine, she said. Her voice cut through the space like a blade. They moved in predictable patterns, used predictable tactics. The enemy knew they were coming before they left the wire. She pointed to the map. This time we're doing it differently. This time you're going to trust me, follow my lead, and ignore everything you think you know about how to run an assault. A hand went up, burly operator with a Brooklyn accent. With all due respect, who the hell are you to tell us how to run an op? Viper didn't blink. I'm the person who's kept this base operational for the last 6 months. I'm the reason half of you are still breathing. And if you don't follow my orders tomorrow night, you'll be dead before sunrise. She let that sink in. Any other questions? Silence. The colonel stepped forward. Command structure for this operation is non-standard. Viper has tactical authority. You follow her directions without hesitation. Understood? Reluctant nods. Ethan watched faces harden with resentment. These were elite operators, men used to being the best in the room. Being told to follow a woman with no visible rank was a slap to their egos. But Ethan understood now. This was the test. This was what she'd been preparing him for. Not just to follow orders, but to give them when no one wanted to listen. The operation launched at midnight. 6 vehicles, 30 operators, no air support, no backup. They rolled into the dark with headlights off, navigating by GPS and instinct through terrain that looked designed to kill. Ethan rode in the 3rd truck, wedged between Torres and a medic named Hassan. Viper was in the lead vehicle, communicating through short, clipped radio bursts. Alpha team, offset left, terrain softer than it looks. Bravo, hold position. Let me scout ahead. Charlie, kill your engine. Movement on the ridge. Every order was precise. Every adjustment saved them from mistakes they didn't know they were about to make. The operators started noticing, started trusting. Ethan watched it happen, the slow shift from skepticism to belief. Viper wasn't just guiding them, she was teaching them to see the battlefield the way she did. They stopped 2 clicks from the compound, everyone dismounted, weapons ready, eyes adjusting to the dark. Viper gathered the team leaders, Ethan included, though he hadn't been officially designated. The compound's got overlapping fields of fire from 4 guard towers. Standard approach gets you killed, so we're going to create a diversion. What kind of diversion? Brooklyn asked. The kind that makes them think we're coming from the east while we hit from the north. She looked at Ethan. Cole, you're leading the diversion team. Take 5 men. Make noise. Draw fire. Keep them focused on you. Ethan's pulse jumped. For how long? Long enough. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Her eyes locked on his. You wanted to learn how to command. Here's your chance. Keep your men alive while keeping the enemy busy. Think you can handle that? It was a challenge, a test, a live fire examination with bullets and blood. Ethan nodded. I can handle it. Good. She turned to the rest of the group. Everyone else, with me. We breached the north wall at 0200. Synchronized watches. Move fast. Trust your training. And if you see me go down... She paused. Don't stop. Complete the mission. Brooklyn frowned. You're not planning on dying tonight? Viper smiled, cold, sharp. I never plan on it, but plans change. Ethan's diversion team moved into position on the eastern ridge, bellies pressed to cold rock, watching the compound light up below. 4 towers, 50 hostile fighters, maybe more, walls reinforced with sandbags and sheet metal, a fortress. Torres settled beside him, scope pressed to his eye. This is insane. Probably. You know she's using us as bait, right? I know. And you're okay with that? Ethan chambered around. She'll get us out, she always does. Torres looked at him like he'd grown a second head. You've got way too much faith in someone you barely know. I know enough. The radio crackled. Viper's voice. Diversion team, you're live in 60 seconds. Make it loud. Ethan keyed his mic. Copy. We're set. He looked at his team, 5 men who'd been handed a suicide mission and told to smile about it. They stared back, waiting for orders, waiting to see if he'd fold under pressure. This was it. The moment everything he'd learned came down to action. Here's how this works, Ethan said quietly. We light them up from 3 positions. Rotate every 30 seconds. Keep them guessing. Make them think we're a full assault team. And when they start returning effective fire, we displace north and regroup. Questions? Silence. Then Torres grinned. You really did learn from her. Let's hope I learned enough. The 60 seconds burned away. Ethan took a breath, raised his rifle, sighted on the nearest guard tower. Light them up, he said. All hell broke loose. The compound erupted into chaos. Ethan's team poured fire into the towers, the walls, anything that moved. Tracers sliced through the dark. Explosions bloomed as grenades found their marks. And within seconds, the enemy was scrambling, shouting, flooding toward the eastern defenses. Exactly as planned. Rotate, Ethan yelled. His team shifted positions, keeping the pressure constant, making it impossible for the enemy to pinpoint their location. Return fire came fast and heavy. Bullets whined off rocks. A mortar round landed close enough to shower them with debris. Ethan tasted dust and adrenaline. Keep moving! Don't let them zero us! They displaced again and again, a deadly game of keep away, played at lethal speeds. His radio crackled. Viper's voice calm as ever. Good work. Hold them for 2 more minutes. 2 minutes. A lifetime. Ethan checked his ammo. Half gone. He scanned his team. Hassan was bleeding from a shrapnel wound. Torres was grinning like a maniac, picking off targets with mechanical precision. They were holding. Barely. Then something shifted. The enemy fire slackened. Voices echoed in a language Ethan didn't speak. He saw movement, figures pulling back from the eastern wall, repositioning. They'd figured it out. Viper, they're reallocating, Ethan barked into the radio. You've got maybe 90 seconds before they realize we're a diversion. That's all I need. A pause. Then, Cole, get your team out now. We can hold. That's an order. Move. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct said to stay, to keep the pressure on. But he'd learned to trust her judgment over his own pride. Fall back, he shouted. Double time. North route. His team disengaged, moving fast through the rocks, leaving the chaos behind. 30 seconds later, the compound's northern wall exploded. Not metaphorically, actually exploded. A shaped charge blew a hole wide enough to drive a truck through. Viper's assault team poured in like water through a crack, methodical and unstoppable. Ethan watched from the ridge, breathless. It was surgical, precise. Every move coordinated to eliminate resistance before it could form. Guard towers went dark. Machine gun nests fell silent. The enemy collapsed inward, confused and leaderless. And at the center of it all, moving through the smoke with a rifle and absolute certainty, was Viper. Torres whistled low. She's a goddamn artist. Ethan couldn't argue. The extraction took 11 minutes. Viper's team pulled the high-value target from a bunker beneath the compound, zip-tied and hooded. They moved back through the breach, covered by overlapping fire, disappearing into the night as cleanly as they'd arrived. By the time Ethan's team reached the rendezvous point, the trucks were already rolling. Viper stood by the lead vehicle, checking her rifle, face streaked with dust. She looked up as Ethan approached. "You held," she said. "You told me to." "I've told a lot of people a lot of things. Most don't listen." Ethan met her eyes. "I'm not most people." Something flickered across her face. Approval, maybe, or recognition. "No," she said. "You're not." The convoy moved out, engines growling, headlights cutting through the dark. Ethan sat in the back of a truck, adrenaline slowly draining, replaced by exhaustion that reached bone deep. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, they'd pulled off a mission that had killed better teams. Because they'd trusted someone who knew what she was doing. Because they'd followed authority that was earned, not assigned. Back at base, the celebration was muted. Operators cleaned weapons, filed reports, treated wounds. The high-value target was whisked away by men in suits. The colonel made a speech about exceptional performance. Ethan ignored all of it. He found Viper behind the armory, alone, staring at the mountains. "Why me?" he asked. She didn't turn. "You know why." "I don't. You're someone who understands that rank doesn't make you a leader. Action does." She finally looked at him. "Most officers learned that too late. Or never. You learned it in time to matter. You taught me. I showed you. You learned." She paused. "There's a difference." Ethan moved closer. "What happens now?" "Now you go back. You keep teaching. You make sure the next generation doesn't make the same mistakes. And you? I keep doing what I do." "Which is?" Viper smiled, small, sad, knowing. "Making sure people like you survive long enough to lead." She turned to walk away. Ethan caught her arm. She froze, and for a heartbeat, he thought he'd crossed a line. Then she looked at him, really looked at him, and he saw something he hadn't expected. Exhaustion. The kind that came from carrying the weight of too many lives for too many years. "You don't have to do this alone," he said quietly. "Yes," she said. "I do." She pulled free, gently but firmly, and walked into the dark. Ethan stood there, watching her go, understanding that some people were built to stand in the gap, to be the one who stepped up when everyone else fell down. And maybe, just maybe, his job wasn't to be like her. It was to make sure others could be. 3 days later, Ethan was back at the training facility, standing in front of a fresh class of eager officers. But this time, he didn't tell them a story. He gave them a scenario. "You're in command. Your team is pinned down. Your CO is out of action. The enemy has superior position. Radio's compromised. You have 30 seconds to decide. Follow the last order you were given, or trust your instincts and improvise." He looked around the room. "What do you do?" Hands shot up. Voices overlapped with answers, theories, textbook solutions. Ethan let them talk. Let them debate. Let them wrestle with the question. Then he said the only thing that mattered: there's no right answer in a manual. There's only the answer you can live with when the bullets stop flying. So choose carefully. Because the people you lead will remember what you did in that moment for the rest of their lives. The room went quiet. One student, young, sharp-eyed, reminded him of himself years ago, raised a hand. "Sir, how do you know if you're making the right call?" Ethan thought about snow and blood and a woman who'd rewritten the rules of warfare. Thought about standing up when everyone else was on their knees. "You don't," he said, "but you stand anyway." And in that moment, he finally understood what Viper had been trying to teach him all along. Authority wasn't about being right. It was about being willing to be wrong in front of everyone, and still choosing to lead. The student's question hung in the air. How do you know if you're making the right call? And Ethan saw his own doubt reflected back at him in 30 pairs of eyes. He was about to answer when his phone vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. The pattern they'd taught him in classified briefings. The pattern that meant, drop everything, answer now. Class dismissed, Ethan said, voice tight. Review chapters 9 through 12. We'll discuss next session. The students filed out slowly, confused by the abrupt ending. Ethan waited until the last one cleared the door before checking his phone. Single text. Encrypted number. You need to see this. Pentagon. Briefing room 7. 2 hours. Come alone. No signature. But he recognized the syntax, the clipped efficiency. Martinez. Ethan's stomach dropped. Martinez didn't send messages like that unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. He grabbed his jacket, killed the lights, and was in his car before his brain caught up with his body. The drive to the Pentagon took 90 minutes through traffic that felt designed to test his sanity. He used the time to run scenarios. Had the operation gone sideways after he'd left? Had Viper been compromised? Had someone finally connected the dots between him and the ghost who kept saving his life? Security at the Pentagon was tighter than usual. They scanned him 3 times, checked his credentials against databases he didn't know existed, and escorted him through corridors that smelled like old coffee and new secrets. Briefing room 7 was deep in the building's classified sector, the kind of place where careers went to die. Martinez was waiting inside, standing next to a man Ethan recognized from classified files, General Robert Hale, head of Special Operations Command. Silver-haired, stone-faced, the kind of officer who'd built his reputation on making impossible decisions look easy. Officer Cole. Hale's voice carried the weight of decades. Take a seat. Ethan sat, his pulse hammered against his ribs. Martinez wouldn't meet his eyes. Hale activated a screen on the wall. Satellite footage appeared, thermal imaging of a compound Ethan recognized. The operation from 3 days ago. He watched his diversion team's movements, watched Viper's assault unfold, watched the extraction happen with surgical precision. Hell of an op, Hale said. Textbook execution. 0 casualties on our side. High-value target secured. By all accounts, a complete success. Ethan said nothing. Compliments from generals always came with a price. Hale switched to a different feed. This one showed Viper, isolated, enhanced, tracked through multiple camera angles. This woman has been active in classified operations for 8 years. In that time, she's run 73 missions. 73. All of them successful. All of them off-book. The general paused the image on Viper's face. Even in thermal, even through layers of digital noise, she looked completely in control. Problem is, Hale continued, we don't know who she works for. The words hit like a physical blow. Ethan's mouth went dry. Sir? She's not one of ours. Not CIA. Not JSOC. Not any special access program we've been able to identify. She just appears. Runs ops. Disappears. And every time we try to track her, we hit walls built by people with more clearance than me. That's not possible. I agree. Yet here we are. Hale leaned forward. You've worked with her twice now. Both times, she demonstrated capabilities and authority far beyond what any standard operator should possess. I need to know what you know about her. Ethan's mind raced. This was a trap. Had to be. They were testing him, seeing if he'd break operational security, seeing if his loyalty to Viper outweighed his loyalty to the chain of command. I know she saved my life, Ethan said carefully. Twice. I know she's the best tactical mind I've ever seen. And I know that if she wanted to hurt us, we'd all be dead already. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Hale studied him for a long moment. Then he glanced at Martinez. Leave us. Martinez stood, shot Ethan a look that said, I'm sorry, and walked out. The door closed with a soft click. Hale killed the screen. The room fell into shadow, lit only by the glow of recessed panels. Off the record, Cole. Just you and me. No recordings. No witnesses. What do you really think she is? Ethan met the general's eyes. I think she's someone who operates outside the system because the system's too slow to do what needs to be done. I think she's proof that sometimes the rules get in the way of winning, and I think trying to control her is a mistake. You sound like you admire her. I do. Even though she might be working against us, she's not. How do you know? Because I've seen her fight. I've seen what she prioritizes. And it's always been keeping operators alive and completing the mission. If she was a threat, she's had 100 chances to burn us. She never has. Hale was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. 6 months ago, we tried to bring her in, offered her a commission, full benefits, the works. She turned us down, said she works better alone. He paused. 2 months later, one of our generals, a man I served with for 20 years, sent a kill order on her, classified, black level authorization. Said she knew too much. Said she was a liability. Ethan's blood went cold. What happened? The kill team disappeared. All of them. No bodies, no evidence. Just gone. Hale's expression was unreadable. 3 days later, that general retired, quietly. Medical reasons, the paperwork said. But I heard he woke up one morning to find a photograph on his pillow. Just a picture. Him, asleep, taken from inside his bedroom. No note, no threat. Just proof that she could have killed him, and chose not to. The room felt smaller, colder. So what do you want from me? Ethan asked. I want you to understand what you're involved in. This woman, Viper, or whatever her real name is, she's beyond our control, beyond our reach, and that terrifies the people who run this country. Hale stood. But it doesn't terrify me. Because in 30 years of service, I've learned that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones we need most. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. She's chosen you for something, Cole. I don't know what. But when the time comes, when she asks you to make a choice between the system and what's right, choose carefully. Because there's no going back. The door opened. Light spilled in. Am I being watched? Ethan asked. Hale smiled without humor. We're all being watched. Question is whether you care. Then he was gone. Ethan sat alone in his briefing room for 20 minutes, processing. His hands shook. His pulse refused to settle. Everything he thought he understood had just been turned inside out. Viper wasn't military, wasn't government. She was something else entirely, a ghost who'd built a career on operating in the spaces where official authority ended and real power began, and she'd pulled him into that world. Why? His phone buzzed. New message. Different number. Rooftop. Now. Ethan looked up at the camera in the corner, red light blinking, always watching. He stood, walked out of the briefing room, and made his way through the Pentagon's labyrinth until he found a service stairwell. The climb took 5 minutes. His legs burned. His breath came hard. The rooftop was empty. Wind whipped across the expanse of concrete and HVAC units. The sun had set, leaving the sky bruised purple and orange. Viper stood at the edge, silhouetted against the dying light. Ethan approached slowly. They're looking for you. They're always looking. They know you're not one of theirs. I never was. He stopped a few feet away. Who do you work for? She turned. Her face was calm, unreadable. No one. That's not an answer. It's the truth. She moved closer, and for the first time he saw something in her eyes that looked almost like weariness. I don't work for governments, Cole. I don't follow chains of command. I do what needs to be done when the system's too corrupt or too cowardly to do it themselves. That's not how this works. There are rules. Rules written by people who've never had to choose between saving lives and following orders. Her voice hardened. You think the Valley was the first time bureaucracy got men killed? You think that general who died on his feet while politicians argued over authorization was an isolated incident? Ethan's throat tightened. So what, you just decide on your own? Who lives, who dies, which missions matter? Yes. The simplicity of it was terrifying. That's insane. Maybe. Viper looked out over the city. But it works, and it keeps people like you alive long enough to become the leaders this broken system desperately needs. I'm not. You are. She cut him off. You stood up when everyone else fell down. You ignored rank when rank was wrong. You led men through a kill zone because you trusted your training over your fear. That's not luck, Cole. That's who you are. You made me that way. I showed you what you already had inside. She paused. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Ethan stared at her. Why me? Out of everyone, why choose me? Because you asked the right question. She smiled faintly. That first night in the valley, you asked about my rank. Not because you cared about hierarchy, but because you wanted to understand authority. Most people never ask. They just follow or rebel. You wanted to know why. And that was enough? It was a start. She reached into her jacket, pulled out a thin folder, handed it to him. This is everything I know about an operation launching in 6 months, classified, high level, and catastrophically flawed. If it goes forward as planned, 200 operators will die. And the people running it don't care because the political optics look good. Ethan opened the folder. Photographs, intelligence reports, tactical assessments marked with red ink, all the places where the plan would fail. His stomach turned. Where did you get this? Doesn't matter. What matters is that you're going to stop it. How? I'm just an instructor. I don't have the authority. Then get it. Her voice was steel. You know people. You have credibility. You've earned respect. Use it. Push back. Make noise. Force them to look at what they're about to do. And if they don't listen, then you make a choice. The same choice I made 8 years ago when I realized the system would rather sacrifice good men than admit it was wrong. Ethan looked up from the folder. You're asking me to go rogue. I'm asking you to save lives. How you do that is up to you. The wind howled across the rooftop. Below, the city lights began to flicker on, one by one, a constellation of normalcy that felt impossibly far away. What if I fail? Ethan asked quietly. Then you fail knowing you tried. That's more than most people can say. She turned to leave. He grabbed her arm, gently this time, but firm. I need to know your real name. She looked at his hand, then at his face. Something shifted in her expression, something almost human. Kira, she said. My name is Kira. Hey, Kira what? Just Kira. That's all you get. She pulled free and walked toward the stairwell. Ethan watched her go, the folder heavy in his hands, the weight of impossible decisions settling onto his shoulders. Kira, he called out. She paused. Will I see you again? She didn't turn around. Only if you need me. Then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows like she'd never been there at all. Ethan spent the next 3 weeks buried in the folder. The operation was called Iron Shepherd, a multi-phase assault on a suspected weapons cache deep in hostile territory. On paper, it looked solid. 300 operators, air support, intel verified through multiple channels. But Kira's notes painted a different picture. The intel was compromised. The weapons cache was a decoy. The real target was a trap designed to draw in coalition forces and obliterate them in a coordinated ambush. And the people running Iron Shepherd either didn't know or didn't care. Ethan started making calls, quiet at first, asking questions, requesting clarifications, suggesting alternative approaches. He contacted Martinez, who dug into the classified planning files and came back pale. It's worse than you think, Martinez said over an encrypted line. They know the intel's shaky. They're proceeding anyway because pulling out would look weak. It's a political operation, Cole, not a military one. 200 men are going to die for optics. Welcome to modern warfare. Ethan slammed his hand on the desk. We can't let this happen. What are you going to do? Storm the Pentagon? Leak classified intel? You'll end up in Leavenworth before the op even launches. Then I'll go through proper channels, file reports, request a tactical review. Already been done, 3 times. Each time it got buried. Martinez's voice dropped. Cole, you need to accept that some battles can't be won from inside the system. So what, I just give up? I'm saying you need to decide what you're willing to sacrifice, because going after this means burning every bridge you have. It means the end of your career. Maybe worse. Ethan hung up, sat in the dark, thought about snow and blood, and a woman who'd built a life on doing what was right instead of what was easy. He thought about the men who'd follow orders into that trap. Good men, men who trusted the system to protect them. He thought about Kira's words, "Choose carefully, because there's no going back." Then he made his decision. The press conference was Ethan's idea. Not official, not sanctioned, just him, a rented hotel conference room, and a handful of journalists he'd contacted through back channels. Veterans advocates, independent reporters, people who'd built careers on exposing military incompetence. He walked into the room wearing his dress uniform, medals polished, shoulders back. The journalists looked up, surprised, skeptical. "My name is Officer Ethan Cole," he said, "and I'm here to talk about an operation called Iron Shepherd." The room went silent. For the next 30 minutes, he laid it out. The flawed intel, the political motivations, the certainty that men would die not because the mission was necessary, but because canceling it would be embarrassing. He showed documents, redacted, carefully chosen, nothing that would violate security protocols, but enough to prove his point. When he finished, the questions came like artillery fire. "Are you saying the military is deliberately sending men to die?" "I'm saying the people running this operation are prioritizing politics over tactics." "Do you have proof?" "You're looking at it. This could be treason. This is trying to save lives." The story broke 6 hours later. Cable news, social media, veteran groups demanding answers. Suddenly, Iron Shepherd wasn't a classified operation. It was a national scandal, and Ethan's phone started ringing. What? The court-martial was scheduled for the following week. Charges: unauthorized disclosure of classified information, conduct unbecoming an officer, insubordination. Maximum sentence, 20 years. Ethan didn't fight it, didn't lawyer up, didn't make excuses. He'd known the cost when he walked into that press conference. He'd chosen to pay it. The hearing was closed door, military tribunal, 3 judges, no press. Ethan sat at a table alone while prosecutors laid out their case. They called him reckless, called him a traitor, called him someone who'd put his own judgment above the chain of command. They weren't wrong. When it was his turn to speak, Ethan stood. "I don't deny what I did. I leaked classified information. I violated protocol. I ignored direct orders to remain silent." He looked at the judges. "And I'd do it again, because those protocols were designed to protect operations, not cover up failures. And the only thing more dangerous than a soldier who questions orders is a system that punishes them for it." The lead judge, a gray-haired colonel with dead eyes, leaned forward. "You think you're a hero, Officer Cole?" "No, sir. I think I'm someone who couldn't live with himself if I stayed quiet. Noble, naive, and irrelevant." The colonel glanced at his notes. "This tribunal finds you guilty on all charges. However," he paused, "in light of recent developments, your sentence is being reconsidered." Ethan frowned. "Developments?" The doors opened. General Hale walked in, followed by a woman in a civilian suit Ethan didn't recognize. The prosecutors looked as confused as he felt. Hale addressed the tribunal. "Gentlemen, I need to invoke classified privilege. Officer Cole's actions are connected to an ongoing intelligence matter that supersedes this hearing." The judges exchanged glances. The lead colonel's jaw tightened. "General, with all due respect, it's not a request." Hale's voice was granite. "This hearing is over. Officer Cole is being transferred to my command for specialized assignment. The charges stand on his record, but enforcement is suspended pending operational review." Translation: guilty, but too valuable to throw away. The tribunal had no choice. They adjourned. Ethan followed Hale out of the courtroom, mind spinning. "What just happened?" "You got lucky." Hale led him down a corridor to a private office. Iron Shepherd was canceled 2 days ago. Too much public scrutiny. Too many questions. "You forced their hand." "I thought I was going to prison." "You still might, but not today." Hale sat behind a desk. "Someone intervened on your behalf. Someone with enough pull to make 3-star generals nervous. Care to guess who?" Ethan's pulse jumped. "Kira." "She didn't give a name, just made a call. Explained that losing you would be unwise. And given her track record, people listened." Hale leaned back. "You're being reassigned. Special Operations Liaison. You'll work between conventional forces and unconventional assets. Translation. You'll be the bridge between the system and people like her. Why? Because you're one of the few people who understands both sides, and because we need someone who's willing to tell us when we're about to do something catastrophically stupid. Hale's expression hardened. This isn't a reward, Cole. It's a leash. You'll have authority, but you'll also be watched. Every decision, every contact, step out of line again, and there's no second chance. Ethan processed that. And if I refuse? Then you go to prison. Iron Shepherd still gets canceled, and someone else takes the job. Probably someone who doesn't give a damn about saving lives. It wasn't a choice. It was an inevitability. I'll take it, Ethan said. Hale nodded. Good. You start Monday. Briefing packets on the desk. Read it. Memorize it. Burn it. He stood. And Cole? Next time you want to blow up your career to save lives, give me a heads up first. Ethan left the Pentagon as the sun set, the briefing packet tucked under his arm. His phone buzzed. Unknown number, text message. You did well. Proud of you. K. He stared at the screen, throat tight. She'd been watching. Of course she had. He typed back, "Thank you for everything." 3 dots appeared, then, "You don't need me anymore. You've become what I always knew you could be." Ethan's chest ached. "Will I see you again?" A long pause, then, "Only if the world's ending. Otherwise, you're on your own." The dots disappeared. The number went dead. Ethan stood on the Pentagon steps, watching traffic flow past, feeling the weight of everything that had changed. He'd lost his career, his reputation, his certainty that the system could be trusted. But he'd gained something more important. He'd learned that authority wasn't given. It was claimed, and the only rank that mattered was the one you earned by standing up when everyone else stayed down. Somewhere out there, Kira was watching, waiting to see what he'd do next. He wouldn't disappoint her. Not again. Part 5. Lưu ý. Viết 6.000 đến 6.500 từ, nối liền mạch với Part 4, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện, không tóm tắt. Mở Part 5 bằng câu chuyện tiếp trực tiếp từ cảnh cuối Part 4. Đây là phần bứt phá và kết thúc trọn vẹn. Nhân vật chính hoàn tất hành trình, được công nhận, tự giải thoát hoặc chọn con đường mới. Đối thủ nhận hậu quả hoặc thay đổi, mỗi xung đột được giải quyết dứt điểm. Tăng hội thoại cảm xúc và quyết định cuối cùng, tạo dư âm mạnh nhưng kết thúc hoàn chỉnh, không để mở, không có phần sau. Phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ, Hoa Kỳ, cinematic giàu cảm xúc, nhịp nhanh, kẻ ngôi thứ ba, không lan man, không dùng gạch đầu dòng gạch chéo tiêu đề phụ. Không nhắc đến chúa gạch chéo tôn giáo. Kết thúc bằng một đoạn kết thỏa mãn và một câu thông điệp ngắn gủi gắm đến mọi người. Pha hội thoại chiếm khoảng 20 đến 25% tổng nội dung, ngắn, sắc, tự nhiên, và ưu tiên show, don't tell. Thể hiện cảm xúc gạch chéo xung đột qua hành động, phản ứng, im lặng và lội thoại, tránh giải thích dài dòng. Trả lời trong mục tin nhắn, không nhảy sang document. Nếu bị giới hạn độ dài, dừng đúng chỗ và ghi continue. Chỉ dẫn bắt buộc, không được xuất hiện trong nội dung truyện. Đây là một câu chuyện điện ảnh hoàn toàn hư cấu được tạo ra chỉ nhằm mục đích giải trí. Không đề cập hay ngụ ý rằng nó dựa trên sự kiện có thật, người thật hoặc câu chuyện có thật. Không sử dụng các cụm từ như dựa trên một câu chuyện có thật, theo ghi chép hoặc bất cứ điều gì tương tự. Tất cả các nhân vật, địa điểm, tổ chức và sự kiện phải hoàn toàn hư cấu. Show more 10 giờ 20 phút, Part 5. Ethan deleted the message and pocketed his phone. The Pentagon steps were empty now. The evening crowds dispersed into the city's anonymous sprawl. He stood alone with the briefing packet under his arm and a future he didn't recognize stretching out before him. Special Operations Liaison. Bridge between the system and the ghosts who operated outside it. A job that didn't exist 6 months ago, created specifically because he'd burned every rule in the book. He should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt hollowed out. The drive back to his apartment took an hour through traffic that barely registered. His mind kept circling back to Kira's final message. You don't need me anymore. But that was the problem. He did need her. Not for tactics or strategy or survival. He'd learned those lessons. He needed her because she represented something he couldn't find anywhere else. Proof that one person, operating with absolute clarity and zero bureaucratic interference, could change the outcome of impossible situations. And now she was gone. His apartment was dark when he arrived. He dropped the briefing packet on the kitchen counter, cracked open a beer he didn't want, and stood at the window watching the city lights blur into constellations of other people's lives. The packet sat there, waiting, demanding attention. Ethan opened it. The first page was an organizational chart so classified it didn't have a name, just a series of code designations and reporting structures that bypassed normal command hierarchies. His position sat at a nexus point, connected to JSOC, CIA, State Department, and half a dozen black programs he'd never heard of. The second page was a personnel file. His own, but different. Scrubbed. His court-martial was listed as Operational Review Resolved. His unauthorized press conference was characterized as Tactical Disclosure Under Duress. Someone had rewritten his history to make him look like an asset instead of a liability. Kira's work. Had to be. The third page was a mission brief. Active, urgent, requiring immediate attention. Ethan read it twice, pulse accelerating. A conventional military strike was being planned against a compound in a disputed border region. Intelligence suggested high-value targets, weapons stockpiles, command infrastructure. The operation was scheduled to launch in 72 hours. Authorization already granted. Assets already moving into position. But buried in the appendix, marked with a single red asterisk, was an analyst's note. Confidence level on primary intelligence, 40%. Recommend additional verification, 40%. And they were sending 200 operators anyway. Ethan's hands shook. This was Iron Shepherd all over again. Different location, different commanders, same catastrophic thinking. He grabbed his phone, dialed Martinez. "It's late, Cole. Read file Echo 7 Tango, right now." Silence. Then the sound of a keyboard. Jesus Christ, they're doing it again. How do I stop it? You don't. You're not in the chain of command. You're a liaison. You observe. You report. You don't have operational authority. Then what the hell is the point of this job? The point is keeping you out of prison while they figure out what to do with you. Martinez's voice softened. Look, I get it. You want to save everyone, but you can't. You used up all your cards stopping Iron Shepherd. You go public again. They'll bury you so deep no one will remember your name. Ethan stared at the file. So I'm supposed to just watch? You're supposed to stay alive. Learn the system. Build credibility. And maybe 5-10 years from now, you'll have enough juice to change things from the inside. In 10 years, how many more missions like this will kill good men? Martinez didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. Ethan hung up, sat in the dark, felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down. He could follow orders, keep his head down, play the long game. Maybe, eventually, earn enough authority to matter. Or he could do what Kira had taught him, stand up, act, accept the consequences. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. His heart lurched. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe she was coming back. But it wasn't her. Text message. Officer Cole. We need to talk. Tomorrow. 800. Location attached. Come alone. General Hale coordinates followed. A location outside the city. Rural. Off any official map. Ethan stared at the message. This wasn't protocol. This was something else. He grabbed his jacket and left. The drive took 3 hours through back roads that turned from asphalt to gravel to dirt. The coordinates led to an abandoned airfield, cracked runways overgrown with weeds, rusted hangars leaning into collapse. Dawn was just breaking, turning the sky from black to bruised purple. A single black SUV sat near one of the hangars. No markings. No escort. Ethan parked, killed the engine, and approached on foot. His hand drifted to the sidearm he wasn't supposed to be carrying. Old habits. The hangar door was open. Inside, lit by a single battery-powered lamp, General Hale sat on an overturned crate. He looked older than he had at the Pentagon, tired, human. "You came," Hale said. "You made it sound important." "It is." Hale gestured to another crate. "Sit." Ethan sat. The hangar smelled like oil and rust and secrets. Hale pulled out a flask, took a drink, offered it. Ethan accepted. Whiskey. Good whiskey. The kind you didn't waste on casual meetings. That operation you read about last night, Hale said. Echo 7 Tango. You think it's a mistake. Not a question. A statement. I think it's Iron Shepherd with a different name, Ethan said. You're right. Hale took the flask back, drank again. I tried to stop it, requested a tactical review, got shut down. The politics are too entrenched. Too many people have staked their careers on this going forward. So why bring me out here? Because I need you to understand something. Hale's eyes were hard. That woman, Kira, or whatever she calls herself, she operates outside the system because the system failed her. 8 years ago, she was one of us. Special Forces. Best tactical mind I'd ever seen. She ran an operation in Kandahar. Perfect execution, 0 casualties, mission accomplished. But the politicians didn't like the optics. They buried the success and court-martialed her for unauthorized engagement. Ethan's stomach tightened. What happened? She was facing 20 years. Dishonorable discharge. The destruction of everything she'd built. Hale's voice went quiet. So she disappeared, walked away from the trial, vanished into the same network she'd been fighting. And when she came back, she wasn't one of us anymore. She was something new, something the system couldn't control. You're saying they created her? I'm saying we did. Hale stood, paced. Every time we punish someone for doing the right thing the wrong way, we push them further outside. And eventually, they stop caring about our approval. They just focus on results. Why are you telling me this? Because you're standing at the same crossroads she stood at. Hale turned to face him. You can stay inside, build your career, learn to navigate the politics. Maybe, eventually, you'll have enough power to change things. Or, he paused, you can walk away, operate like she does, save the lives you can save, damn the consequences. That's not a choice, that's exile. It's freedom. Hale's expression was unreadable. The question is, can you live with it? Ethan's throat was tight. What do you want me to do? I want you to stop Echo 7 Tango. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. You just said you can't stop it, Ethan managed. I can't, but you can. Hale pulled a tablet from his jacket, handed it over. Everything you need is on there. Alternative intelligence. Proof the primary source is compromised. Satellite imagery showing the compound is a decoy. Get this to the right people, journalists, watchdogs, congressional oversight, and the operation collapses. That's treason. That's saving 200 lives. I'll go to prison. Probably. Hale met his eyes. But you'll do it knowing you were right. And 20 years from now, when the files get declassified and people see what really happened, they'll know you were a hero. I don't want to be a hero. Too late. You already are. Ethan stared at the tablet, his entire future compressed into a single choice. Stay silent and watch men die, or speak up and lose everything, again. Why me? He asked quietly. Why not do it yourself? Because I'm too old, too invested. I've spent 30 years building credibility I can't afford to lose. Hale's voice cracked. But you? You've already burned those bridges. You've already proven you'll sacrifice your career for what's right. You're the only person I trust to do this. And if I say no, then I'll find someone else. Or I'll do it myself and spend my last years in Leavenworth. Either way, I won't stand by and watch good men walk into a trap. Ethan looked down at the tablet, felt the weight of it, the finality. He thought about Kira, about the choice she'd made 8 years ago, about the life she'd built on the other side of acceptable. He thought about the valley, about Briggs bleeding in the snow, about the operators who'd died because someone prioritized politics over tactics. He thought about the classroom, about young officers learning that leadership meant standing up when everyone else stayed down. And he realized the answer had always been obvious. I'll do it, he said. Hale's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I haven't survived prison. You will. People like you always do. Hale extended his hand. Ethan shook it. One more thing. When this is over, when you're on the other side of the system, remember that not everyone inside is the enemy. Some of us are trying. We're just trapped by rules we didn't make. I'll remember. Hale nodded, walked to the hangar door, paused. She was right about you, you know, Kira. She said you'd become someone worth watching. I didn't believe her. I was wrong. Then he was gone. leaving Ethan alone with a tablet full of evidence and a future that had just detonated. The second press conference was quieter than the first. Ethan chose a small room in a veterans advocacy office. No cameras, just 3 trusted journalists and a handful of congressional staffers who'd proven they couldn't be bought. He laid out the evidence methodically, showed the compromised intelligence, showed the satellite imagery, showed the casualty projections if the operation went forward as planned. When he finished, the room was silent. One of the staffers spoke first. "You realize what this means for you?" "I do." "You'll be court-martialed. Again. This time there's no coming back." "I know." "Then why?" Ethan thought about the answer, about all the complicated truths and simple necessities that had brought him to this moment. "Because someone taught me that authority isn't about the rank you wear," he said. "It's about standing up when everyone else is afraid to move. And if I don't stand now, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have made a difference." The story broke 6 hours later. Echo 7 Tango was suspended pending review. 2 days later, it was officially canceled. Intelligence reassessment confirmed the compound was a trap. 200 operators stayed home, and Ethan Cole was arrested. The court-martial was faster this time. They didn't bother with theatrics, just read the charges, presented the evidence, and delivered the verdict. Guilty. Dishonorable discharge. 5 years in a military prison. Ethan stood as they read the sentence, face neutral, heart calm. He'd known the cost. He'd paid it willingly. As the MPs moved to escort him out, a voice cut through the courtroom. "Stop!" Everyone turned. A woman stood at the back, civilian clothes, dark hair, face Ethan would recognize anywhere. Kira. She walked forward, calm and unhurried, and handed a folder to the presiding judge. "New evidence, classified executive privilege, immediate review required." The judge opened the folder. His face went pale. He looked at Kira. "Who authorized this?" "Someone higher than you." Her voice was steel. "Read it." The judge read. His hands shook. He looked at the prosecutors. "Clear the room, now." The courtroom emptied. Ethan was left standing alone with Kira and 3 judges who looked like they'd just been told the world was ending. The lead judge spoke carefully. "Officer Cole, in light of new information, this tribunal is suspending your sentence pending national security review. You're being released into protective custody." Ethan blinked. "What?" "You're free to go." The MPs unlocked his cuffs. He stared at Kira. She gave him the smallest nod. Outside, in the cold light of a winter afternoon, Ethan grabbed her arm. "What did you do?" "I reminded them who they work for." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." She started walking. He followed. "I thought you said I didn't need you anymore." "You don't. But the world still needs you." She stopped, turned to face him. "That stunt you pulled, stopping Echo 7 Tango, proved something. Proved you're not just following my example. You're building your own path by destroying my career, by choosing lives over optics. There's a difference." She paused. Hale was right. You're standing at a crossroads, but the choice isn't stay or leave. It's whether you let the system define you or whether you define yourself. And which did you choose? I chose freedom and loneliness and a life where I can't trust anyone because everyone's either trying to control me or kill me. Her expression softened. But I also chose impact, real measurable change. I've saved thousands of lives by operating outside the rules. The question is, can you live with that trade-off? Ethan looked at the sky, at the world spinning on, indifferent to their choices. I don't know. Then figure it out, because in 6 months, there's going to be another operation, another trap, another chance for you to stand up or stay silent, and I won't be there to hold your hand. Where will you be? Wherever I'm needed. She smiled, sad, knowing, final. You're going to do great things, Ethan Cole, with or without me. Just remember, authority isn't given, it's claimed, one hard choice at a time. She walked away. This time, he didn't stop her. He just watched her disappear into the crowd, a ghost who'd rewritten his entire life and then vanished like she'd never existed. His phone buzzed. Martinez. You're not in prison. Notice that. How? Long story. They're offering you a deal. Full reinstatement, clean record. Promotion to captain. All you have to do is sign a non-disclosure agreement and promise to play nice. Ethan closed his eyes. The system, extending an olive branch, offering him a path back to legitimacy. All he had to do was forget everything he'd learned. Tell them I'll think about it, he said. Cole, I'll think about it. He hung up, stood on the sidewalk, watching traffic flow past, feeling the weight of the future settling onto his shoulders. Stay or go. System or freedom. Safety or impact. He thought about the valley, about Viper moving through the snow, about the moment he'd understood that real authority had nothing to do with rank. He thought about the classroom, about young officers learning to question, about the next generation that would face the same impossible choices. And he realized the answer wasn't binary. He could work inside the system, build credibility, earn authority. And when the moment came, when the system failed and lives hung in the balance, he could step outside and do what needed to be done. Just like Kira, a hybrid, a bridge, someone who understood both worlds and could navigate between them. It wouldn't be easy. It would be lonely. It would mean walking a line so thin that one wrong step would destroy everything. But it was the only path that made sense. 5 years later, Ethan stood in front of a new classroom in a new facility training a new generation of officers. But he wasn't teaching tactics anymore. He was teaching judgment, decision-making under pressure, how to recognize when the rules served the mission and when they got in the way. He told them stories about valleys and ambushes, about commanders who led from the front and those who hid behind paperwork, about the difference between rank and authority. He never mentioned Kira by name, never gave details that could be traced, just enough to plant seeds, to make them question, to show them that sometimes the right choice looked like the wrong one until history caught up. And sometimes, late at night, when the facility was quiet, his phone would buzz. An encrypted message, a location, a problem that needed solving. He'd go. He'd help. He'd operate in the spaces between official and unofficial, using the authority he'd earned to bridge gaps the system couldn't close. And when it was over, he'd return to his classroom and teach the next lesson. He was building something Kira had never had, a network, a generation of leaders who understood that authority was earned, not given, who knew that the hardest choice was often the right one. Who would stand up when everyone else stayed down? On a cold night in December, 6 years after the Valley, Ethan received one final message. You've built something beautiful. I'm proud. Stay safe. Stay sharp. The world needs more people like you. K. He typed back. Thank you for everything, for showing me the path. 3 dots appeared. Then, you showed yourself. I just held the mirror. The dots disappeared. The number went dead. Ethan set down his phone and looked out at the snowy night. Somewhere out there, Kira was moving through the dark, still saving lives, still operating outside the system, still proving that one person with clarity and courage could change everything. And here, inside the system, Ethan was doing the same thing in his own way. Building leaders, changing minds, creating a future where fewer people would have to choose between their careers and their conscience. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't clean, but it was real. And that was enough. Years later, when the classified files were finally released and historians began piecing together the truth, they found a pattern. Operations canceled at the last minute, disasters averted by anonymous tips, lives saved by people who operated in shadows. And at the center of it all, 2 names kept appearing, never together, never officially, but always connected by a thread of impossible decisions and unwavering principle. One was a ghost. The other was a teacher. Both understood the same fundamental truth, that real authority isn't about the rank on your chest or the title on your door. It's about standing up in the moment when everyone else is frozen by fear, doubt, or politics. It's about choosing what's right over what's easy. And it's about understanding that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is follow orders without questioning them. Ethan never saw Kira again, but he carried her lessons every day, in every classroom, in every decision, in every moment when the system failed and someone had to step into the gap. He'd learned from the best, And now he was teaching others to do the same. Because the world would always need people willing to stand up when everyone else stayed down. And authority, real, earned, undeniable authority, would always belong to those brave enough to claim it. Real leadership isn't found in the rank you wear. It's forged in the moment you choose to stand when everyone else kneels.